Captain Jake Morrison was drinking his morning coffee when the alarms started going off all over the ship. The New Horizon had been flying through space for 3 months now, looking for new planets and maybe some signs of alien life. Jake never thought they would actually find any aliens, but here they were. And the aliens had found them first. Lisa Brooks ran onto the bridge with her hair still messy from sleep. She was the person in charge of talking to aliens if they ever met any. Right now, she looked like she wished she had stayed in bed. The big screen in front of them showed something that made everyone stop talking and just stare. The alien ship was huge. It was 3 times bigger than their ship and covered in scary-looking weapons. The ship was dark red and black with spikes sticking out all over it. It looked like someone had tried to make the most frightening thing possible and then added more scary parts just to be sure. Jake finished his coffee and set the cup down. He had been a ship captain for 15 years and had seen some strange things, but nothing like this. The alien ship was so big it blocked out the stars behind it. Green lights were flashing all over it in patterns that hurt to look at. The communications officer, a young man named Pete Davis, was trying to make his equipment work properly. His hands were shaking a little as he pressed buttons and turned dials. "Captain, they are sending us a message," he said. "It is coming through on all channels." At once, Lisa sat down at her station and put on her headphones. She had studied alien languages for years, even though no one thought she would ever need to use that knowledge. Now, she was glad she had paid attention in those classes. The computer was already trying to translate whatever the aliens were saying. The main screen flickered and then showed the inside of the alien ship. What they saw made everyone on the bridge lean forward to get a better look. The alien was tall and thin with purple skin and 4 arms. He was wearing what looked like a fancy military uniform covered in medals and ribbons. Behind him stood more aliens in similar uniforms, all looking very serious and important, but what really got everyone's attention was how the alien was acting. He was standing very straight with his chin up high, like he was posing for a picture. His voice was deep and loud, and he spoke very slowly like he was giving a speech to a huge crowd. The computer translated his words and put them on the screen for everyone to read. "Beings of the small ship," the alien said, waving one of his 4 arms dramatically. "You are now in the presence of Admiral Zexfler the Magnificent Supreme, commander of the Outer Rim Fleet, destroyer of rebellions, and bearer of the sacred sword of ultimate victory." Jake looked around at his crew. Everyone was trying not to smile. The alien kept talking, and his titles kept getting longer and sillier. Lisa was writing them down, but she had to stop because there were too many to remember. "You will immediately surrender your vessel to the mighty Zephyrian Galactic Empire," the alien continued. "Resistance is completely useless. Prepare to be conquered by our superior forces. Your planet will bow before our unstoppable power." That was when Jake started to chuckle. He tried to hold it in, but the alien's serious face and dramatic voice were just too much. The chuckle turned into a laugh, and soon he was laughing so hard he had to hold on to his chair. Lisa was covering her mouth with her hand, but her shoulders were shaking with laughter. Pete had turned away from his station because he could not stop grinning. Even the usually serious security chief, Bob Turner, was making strange, snorting sounds as he tried not to laugh. The alien on the screen looked confused. He repeated his message, but this time he spoke even louder and waved his arms more dramatically. This only made the humans laugh harder. One of the other aliens behind him whispered something in his ear, and he looked even more confused. "Maybe we should respond," Lisa said when she finally stopped laughing. She wiped tears from her eyes and tried to look serious again. "What should we tell them?" Jake thought about it for a moment. The alien was obviously trying to scare them, but he was being so dramatic about it that it was impossible to take him seriously. "Tell him we appreciate the entertainment," Jake said. "Ask him if he does birthday parties." Lisa stared at Jake. "Captain, I do not think that is a good idea." "Come on, Lisa," Jake said, still grinning. "Look at him. He is wearing a cape." "An actual cape? And did you see all those medals? He has more decorations than a Christmas tree." The alien was still talking on the screen, but now he was getting more upset. His voice was getting higher, and he was waving all four arms at once. He kept saying things like, "Tremble before our might," and "Your doom is sealed." But he said it all so seriously that it sounded like he was reading from a bad movie script. Pete turned back to his station and started typing. "Captain, should I record this? For the history books?" "Definitely," Jake said. "Future generations need to see this." The alien finally stopped talking and waited for their response. The bridge got quiet except for a few people still giggling. Quietly, Jake stood up and straightened his uniform. He was going to try to be diplomatic, even though it was hard to take the situation seriously. "Admiral, magnificent," Jake said, looking at the screen. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earthship New Horizon. We come in peace and would like to establish friendly relations with your people." The alien looked shocked. This was clearly not the response he was expecting. He turned to talk to the other aliens behind him, and Jake could hear them arguing in their own language even though the computer could not translate it. "Perhaps," the alien said finally, "you did not understand. We are here to conquer you." "You?" As supposed to be afraid, Jake looked at Lisa, who shrugged. "Well," Jake said, "we are not really the afraid type. Would you like to come over for dinner instead?" Admiral Zexthuller the Magnificent stood in his command room feeling very confused. In his 40 years of conquering other species, nothing like this had ever happened before. Usually when he showed up with his giant warship and gave his scary speech, the aliens would either run away crying or start shooting at him. Both reactions made perfect sense to him, but these humans had laughed at him, actually laughed, like he was telling jokes instead of threatening to destroy their planet. Even worse, they had invited him to dinner. What kind of response was that to a proper military threat? His second-in-command, Commander Vextar the Ruthless, walked up to him with a worried look on his face. "Sir, the human ship is still just sitting there. They have not tried to run away or attack us. What should we do?" Zexthuller looked at the big screen that showed the tiny human ship floating peacefully in space. It was so small compared to his mighty warship that he could destroy it with one shot from his weakest weapon. But somehow the humans did not seem worried about this at all. "Send them another message," he said finally. "Maybe they did not understand the first one. Make sure the translation computer is working correctly." Meanwhile, back on Earth, Dr. Amy Peterson was having the busiest day of her life. As the head of the Alien Studies Department at the Global Science Institute, she had always hoped that one day humans would meet aliens. She just never imagined it would happen like this. The communication from the New Horizon had reached Earth 6 hours ago, and now every government leader and scientist on the planet wanted to talk to her. She was sitting in a room full of important people, trying to explain what they knew about these aliens so far. "From what we can tell," Amy said, pointing to the big screen that showed pictures of the alien ship, "their entire culture seems to be based on intimidation and dramatic presentations. Look at their ship design. It has spikes and scary decorations that serve no practical purpose. They are trying to look as frightening as possible." General Paul Carter, the head of Earth Defense, was studying the pictures with interest. He was a serious man who usually did not smile much, but even he seemed amused by what he was seeing. "What about their weapons? Are they actually dangerous?" "Oh yes," Amy said. "Their ship has enough firepower to destroy a small moon. But the interesting thing is how they use it. They do not just attack. They make speeches first. They announce themselves with titles and dramatic music. It is like they want their enemies to be impressed with them before they blow them up." President Karen Williams leaned forward in her chair. She had been elected just 6 months ago and was still getting used to making big decisions. Meeting aliens was definitely not something they had prepared her for. "So what do you think we should do?" Amy smiled. "Well, based on what Captain Morrison reported, I think we should keep doing exactly what we are doing. These aliens seem to be completely confused by the fact that we are not afraid of them. Maybe fear is the only reaction they know how to deal with." Back on the alien ship, Zexthuller was getting ready to send his second message to the humans. He had put on his most impressive uniform, the one with golden spikes on the shoulders and a cape that was so long it needed 2 assistants to carry it. He practiced his most scary facial expression in the mirror and made sure his voice was deep and threatening. The message he sent this time was even more dramatic than the first one. He listed all 47 planets he had conquered and described in detail what happened to species that refused to surrender. He mentioned his collection of defeated enemy weapons and his throne made from the bones of his greatest foes. He spoke for 20 minutes about the unstoppable power of the Zephyrian Empire and how resistance was completely hopeless. When he finished, he waited for the humans to respond with proper fear and respect. Instead, he got something that made him even more confused than before. The humans sent back a video message that started with Captain Morrison sitting at a table in what looked like a dining room. "Thank you for that fascinating presentation," Morrison said cheerfully. "We found it very entertaining. In return, we would like to share some of our own cultural expressions with you." What followed was 20 minutes of what the humans called comedy. They showed videos of people falling down in funny ways, animals doing silly things, and performers telling jokes that made audiences laugh. They explained that laughter was how humans expressed joy and amusement, and that they used humor to make difficult situations more pleasant. Zexler watched the entire video with his mouth hanging open. His crew gathered around the screen, all looking just as confused as he was. They had never seen anything like this before. In their culture, showing weakness or amusement was considered shameful. Serious faces and dramatic speeches were the only proper way to behave. "Sir," Commander Vexstar said quietly, "I do not understand what they are trying to accomplish with this message. Are they mocking us?" "I do not know," Zexler admitted. He was starting to feel frustrated. Everything he knew about conquering other species was not working with these humans. "Send a message to the Emperor. Tell him we have encountered an unusual situation." On Earth, the response to the alien videos was not what anyone expected. Instead of panic in the streets, people were gathering around televisions and computer screens to watch the alien messages. The dramatic speeches and over-the-top threats were being shared on social media with funny comments added to them. A popular video blogger named Chris Nelson had already created a reaction video where he watched the alien admiral's speech and provided humorous commentary. "Look at this guy's cape," Chris said to his millions of followers. "It is longer than my entire apartment. How does he walk around without tripping over it?" The alien's serious voice and dramatic gestures were being turned into memes and jokes. Someone had created a remix of his speech with dance music playing in the background. Another person had made a compilation of his facial expressions with funny captions. Dr. Amy Peterson was watching all of this from her office and making notes for her report. "This is fascinating," she said to her assistant Linda Martinez. "The aliens are trying to establish dominance through fear, but humans are responding with humor instead. It is like we are having 2 completely different conversations." Linda was looking at the social media posts on her tablet. People are already making Halloween costumes based on the alien uniforms. Someone started a petition to invite the Admiral to host Saturday Night Live. Back on the alien ship, Zexler received a response from Emperor Valthan the Eternal himself. The message was short and not very helpful. "Conquer them quickly or come home in disgrace." Zexler realized he was going to have to try a different approach with these strange humans who laughed at everything. Emperor Valthan the Eternal was not having a good day. He sat on his massive throne made from rare crystals and tried to understand the report from Admiral Zexler. In his 3,000 years of ruling the galaxy, he had never heard of anything so ridiculous. "They laughed at him," he said to his advisor, High Commander Nexron the Terrible. "These humans actually laughed at a proper military threat. How is that possible?" Nexron was reading the full report on his tablet. As someone who had helped conquer over 100 different species, he thought he had seen everything. "Sir, the humans seem to have a completely different way of thinking. They appear to find our standard conquest procedures amusing rather than frightening." Emperor Valthan stood up from his throne and walked to the giant window that looked out over his capital city. Millions of his people lived in the perfectly organized buildings below, all following the strict rules of the Empire. Everything was serious and orderly, just the way he liked it. "Send them the terror broadcast," he commanded. "If they think our threats are funny, let us see how they react to the real sounds of defeat." Meanwhile, on the human colony ship Endeavour, Captain Chris Nelson was recording his daily log when the new alien message arrived. The Endeavour was a research vessel that had been studying planets in a nearby star system when the aliens showed up. Unlike the New Horizon, which only had 30 crew members, the Endeavour carried over 200 scientists and their families. "Day 14 of alien contact," Chris spoke into his recorder. "The aliens have now tried to scare us with their ships, their weapons, their dramatic speeches, and their history of conquest. Today they are trying something new. They call it a terror broadcast." Dr. Linda Martinez, the ship's chief psychologist, was analyzing the alien message with her team. The broadcast was supposed to be the recorded screams and pleas of all the species the aliens had conquered over the years. It was meant to show humans exactly what would happen to them if they did not surrender. "This is actually quite revealing," Linda said to her colleagues as they listened to the recording. "The aliens have been collecting these sounds for psychological warfare. They think that hearing the fear of others will make us afraid too." But something unexpected happened when the terror broadcast reached Earth. A music producer named Gary Hansen was listening to the alien sounds when he realized they had a rhythm to them. The screams in alien languages created an interesting pattern that reminded him of electronic music. Gary spent the next 6 hours working on his computer, adding beats and melodies to the alien recording. When he finished, he had created what he called Galactic Terror Remix, a surprisingly catchy dance song that used the alien sounds as the main musical elements. He uploaded the song to the internet with a note that said, "Thanks to our new alien friends for providing the samples." Within hours, the song was being played at dance clubs around the world. People were actually dancing to the sounds that were supposed to terrify them. Back on Emperor Valthan's flagship, the news of what humans had done with their terror broadcast caused complete chaos. No species had ever responded to their most frightening psychological weapon by turning it into party music. "They made it into entertainment," High Commander Nexron reported, his voice full of disbelief. "Humans all over their planet are playing it at social gatherings and moving their bodies to the rhythm." Emperor Valthan sat down heavily in his command chair. His most powerful tools of conquest were being turned into jokes by these impossible humans. What kind of species responds to terror with celebration? On Earth, Dr. Amy Peterson was being interviewed by news reporters from around the world. Everyone wanted to understand how humanity should respond to these aliens who seemed determined to conquer them. "The interesting thing," Amy explained to the cameras, "is that these aliens appear to have built their entire civilization around being scary. They have impressive ships, dramatic uniforms, frightening weapons, and threatening speeches. But they seem completely unprepared for anyone who is not afraid of them." "So you are saying we should keep making fun of them?" asked reporter Janet Taylor. "Not exactly making fun," Amy corrected. "We are responding naturally according to our own culture. Humans use humor to deal with stress and unusual situations. When something seems over the top or dramatic, we tend to find it amusing. We cannot help it." The situation escalated when Emperor Valthan decided to demonstrate his power by having his entire fleet perform what he called a display of ultimate dominance. All 50 of his warships arranged themselves in a frightening formation and began flying in precise patterns while broadcasting ominous music. The display was certainly impressive from a technical standpoint. The ships moved together like a giant mechanical ballet, creating shapes in space that demonstrated their advanced technology and coordination. The music was deep and threatening, designed to strike fear into the hearts of anyone who heard it. Unfortunately for the aliens, humans had a different reaction than expected. Someone on Earth started providing live commentary on the alien fleet maneuvers, describing them like they were watching a sporting event. "And here comes the lead ship making a sharp left turn," the commentator said excitedly. Look at that formation. They are spelling out what appears to be a skull and crossbones in space. The coordination is really quite remarkable. Social media exploded with comments about the alien performance. People were rating the formations like Olympic judges and suggesting improvements to their choreography. Someone created a scoring system and started giving points for technical difficulty and artistic expression. The final straw came when a group of human musicians watched the alien fleet display and decided to create their own music to go with it. They composed a piece they called Symphony for Scary Spaceships and synchronized it perfectly with the alien movements. When this version was broadcast back to the alien fleet, something unprecedented happened. For the first time in Emperor Valthan's long reign, his own crew started to see their serious military maneuvers as something amusing rather than impressive. Junior Commander Zixtal, the youngest officer on the flagship, was watching the human musical interpretation of their display when he felt something strange happening to his face. His mouth was turning upward at the corners and he was making a sound he had never made before. It took him several minutes to realize he was experiencing something the humans called laughter. Emperor Valthan noticed that his crew was acting strangely. Some of them were making unusual facial expressions and there were odd sounds coming from different parts of the ship. The perfect order and seriousness that had always defined his empire was starting to crack. "Sir," High Commander Nexron said quietly, "I think we may have a problem." Colonel Steve Murphy had been put in charge of Earth's new alien response team 3 days ago, and he was already getting a headache from trying to understand the situation. He sat in a conference room with representatives from every major government on Earth, all trying to figure out how to deal with aliens who wanted to conquer them but kept getting confused when humans laughed at their threats. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," said President Williams. "We have a massive alien fleet pointing weapons at our planet, but instead of attacking us, they keep sending us increasingly dramatic messages because we are not responding with proper fear." "That is exactly right," Steve confirmed. "And the more we respond with humor and creativity, the more confused they get. It seems like their entire military strategy depends on their enemies being afraid of them." Dr. Amy Peterson stood up and walked to the big screen that showed the latest intelligence about the alien fleet. "I have been studying their communication patterns, and I think I understand what is happening. These aliens have probably conquered dozens of other species using fear and intimidation. Every other civilization they met either ran away or fought back with anger and desperation." "But we are not doing either of those things," added General Carter. "We are responding with something they have never encountered before, amusement." Steve nodded. "Which gives us a unique opportunity. If fear is their main weapon, and we are not afraid of them, then we have accidentally neutralized their primary advantage." In space, Admiral Zexthaler was having his own meeting with his senior officers. The magnificent conference room of his flagship was filled with aliens wearing impressive uniforms and worried expressions. They had been trying to conquer the humans for 2 weeks now, and nothing was working the way it should. "The humans have begun what appears to be coordinated psychological warfare," reported Intelligence Officer Kexival the Sharp-Minded. "They are broadcasting programs that seem designed to make our threats appear threatening." "What kind of programs?" Zexthaler asked, though he was not sure he wanted to know the answer. "Cooking shows, sir. They are showing their population how to prepare meals while under siege. They have also created dating advice programs about finding romance during an alien invasion. And there is something called a comedy show where performers make jokes about our fleet movements." Commander Vextar shook his head in disbelief. "Sir, yesterday they broadcast a program called Alien Fashion Review, where they discussed our uniform designs and suggested improvements. They said our capes were too long for practical combat and recommended shorter styles in brighter colors." Back on Earth, the response to the alien situation had taken on a life of its own. What started as natural human reactions to dramatic alien threats had evolved into organized cultural warfare. Television producers, musicians, comedians, and artists were all contributing to what was becoming the most unusual military conflict in history. Kate Phillips, a systems engineer at the Global Communications Center, was coordinating Earth's broadcasting strategy. Her job was to make sure that every message sent to the aliens was designed to be as non-threatening and amusing as possible. "Today we are launching Operation Friendly Neighbor," she announced to her team. "We are going to send the aliens a compilation of Earth's greatest comedy moments, followed by a cooking show featuring recipes from around the world. Then we finish with a nature documentary about puppies." The plan was working better than anyone had expected. Reports from various human ships in space indicated that the alien fleet was becoming increasingly disorganized. Their formations were getting sloppy, their communications were becoming less formal, and some of their ships had even been observed flying in patterns that served no military purpose. Dr. Linda Martinez had been analyzing the psychological impact of humor on the alien mindset. "What we are seeing is a complete breakdown of their authoritarian culture," she explained to the United Nations Assembly. "Their entire social structure is based on maintaining fear and respect through intimidation. But when that intimidation fails, they do not know how to function." The breakthrough came when humanity decided to escalate their strategy. Instead of just responding to alien threats with humor, they began proactively sending friendly and amusing content to the alien fleet. Earth's first major offensive was called Galaxy's Funniest Home Videos, Special Alien Edition. It was a compilation of amusing moments from the aliens' own broadcasts, edited together with cheerful music and gentle commentary. The show pointed out funny details that the aliens probably had not noticed about their own behavior. The program highlighted things like how Admiral Zextler always adjusted his cape before speaking, how the aliens seemed to have trouble walking in their oversized helmets, and how their dramatic arm gestures sometimes knocked things over in the background of their messages. It was presented with the same friendly tone used for family entertainment. When this broadcast reached the alien fleet, something unprecedented happened. Several alien crew members were caught making the same strange facial expressions and sounds that Junior Commander Zixta had experienced earlier. The condition was spreading throughout the fleet like a virus. Emperor Valthan received an emergency communication from Admiral Zextler requesting immediate guidance. "Sir, approximately 30% of my crew has been infected with the human condition," the Admiral reported nervously. "They are making unusual sounds and seem unable to maintain proper military seriousness." "What kind of sounds?" Emperor Valthan demanded. "The humans call it laughter, sir. And once it starts, it seems to be contagious. Yesterday, 3 of my officers watched a human program about small furry animals and were unable to perform their duties for 6 hours because they could not stop making the laughing sounds." Emperor Valthan realized that the situation was much worse than he had thought. The humans were not just resisting conquest, they were somehow changing his own people. "Prepare all ships for immediate assault," he commanded. "We will destroy them before this infection spreads any further." But Admiral Zextler had more bad news. "Sir, that may not be possible. The humans have sent us something they call an invitation. They want to meet in person to discuss what they call cultural exchange. They promise to teach us about humor if we promise not to destroy their planet." "Absolutely not," Emperor Valthan said immediately. "We do not negotiate with species, we are conquering." "But sir," Zextler said hesitantly, "some of my officers are asking if we can accept the invitation. They say they want to learn more about this laughter thing." Commander Vextar has specifically requested permission to attend what the humans call a comedy show. Emperor Valthan felt a cold fear growing in his stomach. His perfect military machine was falling apart because of human jokes and friendly videos. For the first time in his long career of conquest, he was beginning to wonder if he had finally met an enemy he could not defeat. The first crack in the Zephyrian Empire came from the most unexpected source. Junior Commander Zixtal, the youngest officer in the entire alien fleet, was supposed to be monitoring human communications when he discovered something that changed Everything got it started when Zixtal received a private message from Earth that was different from all the others. Instead of being broadcast to the entire fleet, this one was addressed specifically to him. The message was simple. "Hello there, you seem curious about laughter. Would you like to learn more?" Zixtal looked around the communication center to make sure no one was watching him. Then he sent back a nervous response. "What is this thing you call laughter? How does it work?" On Earth, Dr. Gary Hansen was leading the new Alien Individual Outreach Program. As the world's leading expert in communication with non-human species, he had suggested that maybe the key to understanding these aliens was to talk to them one at a time instead of trying to communicate with their whole military structure. "We have been treating them like a single unit," Gary explained to his team, "but they are individuals just like us. Maybe some of them are curious about humans but are afraid to ask questions in front of their leaders." The conversation with Zixtal continued over several days. Gary patiently explained the concept of humor and how humans used it to make difficult situations more bearable. He sent examples of gentle jokes and funny stories that did not make fun of anyone, but just celebrated the amusing side of life. Zixtal was fascinated. In his culture, showing any emotion other than seriousness or anger was considered weakness. But these humans seemed to think that joy and amusement were good things that made life better. "Your laughter sounds pleasant," he messaged back. "It makes a good feeling inside my body. Is this normal?" "Completely normal," Gary assured him. "That good feeling is exactly what laughter is supposed to do." Meanwhile, Emperor Valthan was growing more desperate as reports came in from across his fleet. The laughter infection was spreading faster than he could control it. Entire sections of ships were having difficulty maintaining proper military order because the crew members kept breaking into smiles and making cheerful sounds. "High Commander." Nexron brought him the daily reports with a worried expression. "Sir?" "Admiral Zexthaler reports that his weapons officer spent 3 hours yesterday watching human videos of baby animals and was completely unable to focus on targeting systems. The engine room crew has requested permission to paint their workspace in brighter colors because the current gray walls make them feel sad." "This is unacceptable," Emperor Valthan declared. "Order all ships to cut off communication with the humans immediately. No more messages in or out." But it was too late. The change had already begun, and it was spreading through the fleet faster than any official order could stop it. Crew members who had experienced laughter were quietly sharing the feeling with their friends. Human videos were being passed around secretly through personal communication devices. Captain Rachel Moore of the Earth diplomatic vessel Unity was preparing for the most important meeting in human history. After weeks of secret communications with individual aliens who wanted to learn about humor, the moment had finally come for face-to-face contact. Junior Commander Zixtal had agreed to meet with humans in person, but he had to do it without his superiors knowing. He arranged to take a small shuttle from his ship, supposedly to inspect nearby asteroids for mining opportunities. The meeting took place in the cargo bay of the Unity, which had been decorated to look as friendly and non-threatening as possible. Instead of military uniforms, the human diplomats wore casual clothes and had prepared a simple meal to share. When Zixtal first saw humans in person, he was surprised by how different they looked from what he had expected. They were smaller than his people and had only 2 arms, but their faces were kind and welcoming. Most importantly, they did not seem afraid of him at all. "Welcome," Captain Moore said with a warm smile. "We are so glad you decided to visit us." For the first time in his life, Zixtal experienced what humans called a genuine laugh. It started as a small sound in his throat and grew into something wonderful that made his whole body feel light and happy. The humans laughed with him, not at him, and he realized that this was what friendship felt like. Over the next several hours, Zixtal learned about human culture, humor, art, and music. The humans taught him simple jokes and showed him how laughter could bring people together instead of driving them apart. They explained that humor was not about making others feel bad, but about finding joy in the unexpected and silly parts of life. "I want to share this with my people," Zixtal said finally, "but I do not know how. Our leaders will not understand." Maybe you do not need to convince your leaders first, suggested Dr. Gary Hansen. Maybe you start with your friends, and they start with their friends, and eventually the whole fleet will understand. That was exactly what happened. When Zixtel returned to his ship, he quietly began teaching laughter to other young officers. They taught it to their friends, who taught it to their friends. Within days, the infection of joy had spread to every ship in the fleet. The end came not with a battle, but with a revolution of happiness. Emperor Valthan woke up one morning to find his entire crew laughing, singing, and creating art instead of preparing for war. His perfectly serious military machine had transformed overnight into something completely different. Admiral Zexler appeared on his screen, but instead of his usual dramatic uniform, he was wearing bright colors and had a genuine smile on his face. "Emperor," he said cheerfully, "I have wonderful news. We have learned something amazing from the humans." "Report," Emperor Valthan said weakly. "We have learned how to be happy, sir." "The humans have taught us that life can be joyful instead of just serious all the time. My crew has never been more motivated or productive, but now they are working because they want to, not because they are afraid." Similar reports came in from every ship in the fleet. The transformation was complete and irreversible. The Zephyrian Galactic Empire, built on fear and intimidation, had become something entirely new in the span of a few weeks. Emperor Valthan realized he had a choice. He could try to fight this change and probably lose his entire empire, or he could learn what his people had discovered. "Teach me," he said quietly to Admiral Zexteler. "Show me this laughter thing." 6 months later, the galaxy was a very different place. The former Zephyrian Galactic Empire had become the Intergalactic Federation of Friendship, with Earth as a founding member. Emperor Valthan, now calling himself Vinny and wearing comfortable clothes instead of intimidating robes, had established the first cosmic comedy club on his capital planet. Captain Jake Morrison filed his final report on the mission. "We set out to explore space and maybe find some aliens. Instead, we accidentally taught an entire galactic empire how to have fun. The universe is definitely a friendlier place now, and honestly, this turned out way better than another space war. Humanity had discovered their greatest strength was not technology or weapons, but their ability to find joy and bring people together through laughter. And the galaxy would never be the same."